Welcome to today's reading. This is Trinity Gaia Oracle. As you can tell from the title, today's talk, channeling, will be around the topic of the incredible symbol of the lighthouse and what this means in general, but also to kind of go down a couple layers deeper. In a lot of ways, many of you are already picking up what I'm putting down. Like you already have a pretty good idea of what this means for you, but you're drawn to this particular reading because you're encountering what it is to be a lighthouse in your life in a new way. To know that you're not alone in this experience, that there are others out there like you that are encountering these things too, can bring a lot of comfort to have that validation, to have those synchronicities. And I'm very grateful to be that for you. So thank you for being here. First thing is to start with like the most obvious interpretation of the symbol of the lighthouse. And that would be what we do with lighthouses in the physical reality, why we created them, why we set them up where we did, why we structured them the way that we did, the times of the year, the cycles, the weather, the locations on the planet when they would be manned. All of these things can come into play for you depending on your unique situation and how it's manifesting for you. You may feel like you're the physical lighthouse, or you feel like you're the person manning it, or you're just the light at the top spinning around, making sure that everything around you can see your light. But there's that motion, that rotation, the care needed to make sure that that light is as bright as it could possibly be. You may resonate with King of Cups energy as well, because typically lighthouses are close to large bodies of water and yet kind of rocky shores. I have a specific image in mind of this lighthouse on this small piece of land, and there's just constant waves crashing against the rocky edges around this small piece of land that the lighthouse sits on. That may resonate with specific people, or you know, someone in particular. That message was for you. But they're located on all different kinds of land all over the planet. The particular reason that we build the lighthouse is to warn ships away from these rocky shores. Danger is here. If you have been caught in a storm and you kind of lost where you were, and this is speaking more to a time when we use lighthouses more than we do now, because now we have radar and we have satellite and sonar. We can figure out where we are without needing to have the lighthouse warn us. Those things now are, they have their own symbolism for our modern time. But in particular, the lighthouse, during its time of prevalent use and necessity, it was taking care of those navigators to prevent them from coming ashore, from having their ships broken over the rocky shoreline and sinking. During like foggy weather, storms, anything like that, it was very important for that to be a thing. And it's not just a trade vessel necessarily, or your local fisherman. It could be, depending on the time, like whole battalions of soldiers trying to get home to their families or on their way to do battle to prevent something from happening. Like there's so many souls that these lighthouses protected and guided. A synchronicity with a song, and it is Seal. There's a song where the lyrics talk about how his eyes can grow large, and when it snows, the light that you shine can be seen. That is like a heightened awareness, heightened sensitivity, being adaptable, to be able to see your light that is amplified because of the snow, which is water crystallized. The reflected aspect to the snow allows your light to travel farther as well. So there's a heightened awareness, heightened sensitivity from both sides, so that there could be the comprehension, the awareness to reach one another. So in this aspect, in this song, the light would be the lighthouse. This is kind of going into more of the metaphorical aspect. For some of the collective tuning in, that is really going to hit home for you. For others in the collective, or everyone tuning in, I want to move more into what being a lighthouse in your life can mean. I can speak from experience myself personally, but this is not about my experience. However, my own experience is going to be part of this. There's a reason that I was guided to speak to this for you guys, because what I have experienced has the necessary basis of knowledge for which to have that information come through. The metaphor that I have used when explaining to some individuals, very few, what this is kind of like is, like if you've watched paranormal shows, I believe it's the Ghost Box. So pretty much the energy can be manipulated around this device to go through the dictionary within this device and select specific words. This metaphor is somewhatly similar to what I feel we are, to an extent. Those that feel that they have mediumship qualities, that can channel, that are aware that this is a part of who they are, to a point that it is somewhat part of life. So everything that you've experienced is that dictionary. Everything you've experienced is that dictionary. And when the light within you seeks to illuminate space around you, it can only work with what is contained within your knowledge, your experience, and that includes your subconscious. Everything that you've ever been exposed to is contained within you. So this light looks at you or me or another reader, and they're like, you have that exact basis that is needed to fully bring through this message and completion. So I'm going to help you. I'm going to work with you. I'm going to assist you in healing, so you can be this lighthouse, that you can shed light on this, because you have what is necessary for this message to come through in completion, to resonate and reach souls, individuals that maybe didn't know X, Y, or Z, or they knew it, but they didn't have confidence in it, and they felt alone, so they maybe lost their way a little bit. So if you're here, you're probably like following me word for word, like, yep, I'm right there with you, yep, to some extent. Now that's not everyone, but a fair amount of you are like, yes, this makes sense to me. I have words for this now. And I understand how empowering that is, because to some extent, most of what we spend our lives doing is trying to figure out who and what we are. We just don't have the language for it necessarily when we're 5 or 9 or 13. But maybe, as we get older and we learn more about life and ourselves, and as a society, we become more aware of things like quantum physics wasn't really talked about when I was a teenager. I had no idea. But now I know about it, and it's fascinating because it seems to be mirroring some of the things that I already kind of intuitively knew. But now I have words for it. Depending on where you are in your healing journey and your healing path, this will be experienced a little bit differently for each and every one of you. And I know in a previous reading of mine, I definitely encouraged you guys to reach out for support, for assistance, for like whatever you need, because this is not something that is easy to live, to heal, to transmute, to move through. And we are social beings. We do need that social aspect to be healthy. To move through this process of healing and being that lighthouse that you are, in a more and more empowered state where your light shines brighter and brighter, taking care of you is your number one priority. Now, people are going to project their ideas of what you should be doing onto you, but that's their projection. It's not you. You know what you need. You are your own best friend. You know you better than anyone else alive. You know what you need. So they can tell you what you should do all they want. At the end of the day, you're going to do what you need to do for you. When I was younger, and I did not understand this, I didn't have words for it. I didn't know that I was different than others around me, or why or how. But I was always more aware. I was always able to understand what was underneath the mask, like what people present you first, how they choose to step into communication with you because it's how they want to be perceived, but what's really going on underneath that is not the same. I knew that as a child. Children are incredibly intuitive. They're aware so much more than we give them credit for. And it's even more so as the generations progress because they're being raised by individuals that are more aware. So they become even more aware. So it's even more important for us to understand what's going on with us so we can guide them, so they can understand themselves in a way that allows them to feel empowered. So as a child, I didn't have anybody that understood what was going on with me to be able to give me an explanation as to why I was experiencing what I was experiencing the way I was. As you know, I moved into like my younger teenage years, there was a lot of this darkness that was kind of around me, and it was like working through karma. These were all challenges. All of them, like every hurt was all to give me a piece of myself back. I'm a warrior. We all are to some extent. We're all fighting to not just survive, but literally be happy. Have our own peace in our life every day. Even though others may perceive what you're doing is not fighting for that, you know your truth. You know what you're wrestling with. Sometimes when it appears like you're doing nothing, that's when you're fighting the hardest. That's when you're doing the most work, because all of you is focused on something that others can't see or understand within you. And it's work that only you can do. All of these things that have happened to me, and a fair amount of them, I don't care to revisit. I've healed them. I acknowledge what they are. And I have become empowered. I've become stronger as a result of that. And I did not do that alone. I was always aware that I was not alone. Like I don't know how to explain it. It's just to simply put it, like I never put the concept of divine, God, higher being, source, I never put that in a box. I definitely encountered, other perspectives and systems and ways of which to relate and whatnot, but I really liked the concept that was presented where it's your unique relationship, and it really is nobody else's place to ask about that. It's between you and how you relate to that intelligence, that awareness that you're not alone, that every step you walk with aid, help, support. I don't have the words for it. It's part of why I get song synchronicities, is because music, it expresses an emotion, a resonance within you, a memory. It's more than just the word. sound may be something that is incredibly helpful in healing and shifting the energies within your environment to better support you to have a very firm boundary around your light. It's definitely for someone. So on this journey of awakening, like I've kind of been on it my whole life to some extent, but it's really amped up going through a dark night of the soul. Being that lighthouse, you have to understand yourself completely. You have to know every brick, every window, every latch. You have to understand everything going on with you. So when that storm hits your lighthouse, you already know how to move everything within you to be able to withstand the pressure of it impacting you. So you can keep shining that light no matter how much pressure, weight, wind, water is just wanting to take you out, right? Knock you off your balance. Because the truth is, you know who you are. Now this sounds really intimidating. It does. And at first, like, your first like toe in the water with this process of being that lighthouse, like the concept that God never gives you more than you can handle is true. And the essence that you're never alone. You're whatever you need to overcome, if you're receptive to receiving it, will be there. It takes so much strength to remain empathic and open and receptive and considerate and kind and compassionate when you're going through something like that. It takes strength. Because the moment you shut down and you block it all out, you lose all the momentum. And behind that conscious choice to be open and receptive because you know who you are, that statement, you know who you are, like very passionate. I immediately like got this like impression of somebody going, what the hell? What does that mean? You tell me who I am then. And I'm laughing because I've been there. I know that frustration. I've lived it too. So I find that laughter kind of, it breaks up a lot of the denser energy because I'm not laughing at you, I'm laughing with you. So when I can only give you the truth of how I relate to it. And I have to trust that there's a reason why I'm being called to share this. So I am moving in faith right now. I am being receptive right now. I am going with the flow. I am trusting that divine, God, source, Gaia, higher self, all of the beings that have assisted me, the intelligences, maybe they're interdimensional. Like, I am not going to put this energy in a box. I know that there's probably a lot more going on than what I consciously have been allowed to know, simply because it might freak me out a bit. But I trust that because I've always made it through whatever challenge came to me, because I have not been alone, that I will continue to be in that space. I am trusting that to be that consistent because it's been consistent. There is your I'm at work hat. Like, you pull out the knowledge of how to do your job, how to do it in a way that causes the least amount of ripples, but allows you to be productive and successful and achieve and overcome and feel good in your day and feel good about what you've done and the impact you've made. You have your I'm with my family, I'm with my best friend, I'm with my partner. You know, like, you have these different hats that you wear. There's still you that's wearing the hat. So who is that you? Okay. So you discard these hats, these roles. It comes to who are you when you're alone with yourself. That is ground zero. From there, it moves into, well, what are you thinking when you're in this space? What are you feeling in response to those feelings and those thoughts, and how they feed off of one another because they trigger one another? Okay, so that's like your mental chatter and kind of what's going on and what you're processing at the time. That's more surface. When you're alone, you're more aware of like the top layer of your subconscious, and that's what the mental chatter is. Through that, you get somewhat of a temperature of what's going on even deeper within your subconscious. That's where, say you have one thought, triggers this feeling, and it goes back to a memory. The memory is more of the subconscious. These are all stories we tell ourselves. That's what memories are. And the more that you revisit a memory, science has demonstrated that the more that you revisit a memory, you rewrite it, it changes, it evolves. Whether it's because you remember a little more detail this next time, because you've revisited it again and your mind's like, all right, we're going to unlock a little more of this because you're here again. Which is possible. It's not necessarily saying that your memories are false, because they're subjective. Deeper than that, that's who you are. What drives you? What motivates you? What have you been constantly seeking from the time you were a child, the earliest memory you have of who you are, of your awareness? What is that first memory? From that moment forward, you were building off of that, and building and building and building, and you gained language to describe who you are. The more that you understand who you are, the more that you're capable of withstanding these storms. Because they're going to be people, they're going to be energies, they're going to be dynamics. There can even be somewhat of a oppressive aspect that tries to put its idea of who you are on you. And you're going to have to know that it's not you, that it's not your truth. For example, I have always been aware since my first memory. I think I was like 3 or 4 years old when I came online. I was staring into the sun. That's when I was like, whoa, okay, I'm here. And I kind of giggle at it now, because now I know that it's possible that light codes were activating me. That's just like, I didn't know that until the last year or two that was a thing. That's fascinating to me. You may have your own stories like this, your own synchronicities within this. So from that moment forward, I always knew that there was an important person that wasn't in my life that I missed. That they were a part of me, but they were not in my life. I was always aware of that. Always. I didn't know who they were. I didn't have any idea of who they were. I didn't understand at that time what it could possibly have meant. As I grew older, being a young teenager in today's society, of course you're going to be like, it's got to be a guy. Or, for me, being straight, it would have to be a guy. A romantic aspect to it. But that's not necessarily the case. That's just, being a teenager, right? In my early 20s, and I really tried to find this within people around me. But they never really had that. It's like they couldn't match me. They couldn't meet me at my level. They were scared of themselves. They didn't want to understand themselves. They liked the mask, the role. They were more comfortable with that. So the truth is, I've always been seeking truth and love and honesty, and someone who is even if they're experiencing fear at being genuinely vulnerable and honest and raw and not hiding themselves, they do it anyway. I have been seeking that. Now that may be something that I can only find in this being, this divine, this source, this God, that I'm not putting in a box. That may be the thing. Maybe I was missing that. Maybe I was aware of that. I'm not going to be one to tell the divine who to be. So I don't. But I have been, because of that, always seeking truth and love and willing to see the light in other individuals, even if I myself was having a very human experience. As I said, going through these injustices, these traumas, these karmic things that have happened to us. And I say us because you can't be alive and not have these kinds of things. I don't know a single person who has gone through childhood without something. And if they say they don't have something, that's because they don't want to talk about it. And that's fine. You can know that they're full of it and yet respect that that's not something they want to discuss with you. Boundaries. So what is it that you have been seeking consistently from your earliest memory, your feelings, your desires, when you didn't have words? What were you seeking outside of yourself? Looking for it to be reflected back to you because you already have it inside you. What is that thing? That is who you are. So if you found something in your life that was that you felt could be that way with you, that reflection that you're seeking to validate that you're not the only one, that you're not alone in that, once you encounter that, it's going to drive you to yourself. It's not going to drive you to that person. They may end up being a part of your path, yes, but it's not driving you to them because they're not who you are. You have been seeking that outside of you because in truth, you are wanting to know yourself. And being social beings, we are going to need a social aspect to something like that. That honesty, that raw, genuine honesty to be found in someone outside of ourselves, and not just within us. We're going to need to know we're not alone in it, that others are capable of that. And it's not that people aren't capable of it, it's that they choose not to. And that's their choice. Do you choose the red pill or the blue pill? Do you choose to find the answers to who you are? Or do you choose to remain oblivious and go with, being one of the sheep in the flock that goes along with what's going on around them, but never really wakes up to their power, wakes up to who they are? That's everyone's choice. And they make those choices for their own personal reasons. And you have to respect that. Because it's their choice. It's not yours. You have no ownership of anything they decide. They're creating their own world by choosing the decisions that they do. Choosing the paths that they do. And I speak this because to be a lighthouse, you're going to be someone capable of deep empathy. And being that lighthouse, knowing who you are, like if that individual or connection or awareness that you're not alone and you're seeking to fully protect that awareness within yourself, that is what drives you. to know everything about you, to be able to move within the storm in a way that it doesn't affect you in a negative way at all. You're able to still shine that light for others that are looking to know, where am I? That passion, that drive within you. It's not about that person outside of you. It's about what you believe to be right, what you believe to be wrong, what you're willing to accept, and what you're not. Now, I'm saying this with passion because what's underlying this, these are the words I've used that are being led to be expressed, but there's the emotion underneath it of, I have fought, and I'm sure all of you to some extent can relate to this. You have overcome so much in your life. You have chosen to focus on all the ways in which these things have decided to see if they could break you, and instead you have decided to free yourself of their influence. The transmuting, what was intended to snuff your light out, instead allowed your light to persist, to be strong, to be empowered, to be able to transmute what was intended to hold you down. It made you stronger because you chose for it to. There's this aspect of like, oh, hell no. Oh, you think that you're going to do this and you're going to do that, and I'm just going to curl into a fetal position and give up? Oh, hell no. Watch this. Like, that is the spirit there of a fighter. I'm not saying that you're not going to be in times where you're going to just kind of like go within and do some work, and to others it may look like you've given up. You're working harder and fighting harder than ever in those moments. And you don't need them to validate you in that. You know you. But when you get back up, whatever put you down doesn't hold you anymore. You're stronger. Every time something causes you to pause, you transmute it so it doesn't affect you anymore. Every brick of your lighthouse, the mortar in between it, you built that. You know you better than anyone. And you're the only being in this physical realm that could fully galvanize all of you to one focus, which is you have a right to be who you are, to exist, to be happy, to be prosperous, to have peace. You have a right to that. And you do not need to give any of that away to a wind, to a storm, to fog. You don't need to give that away to anything that tries to come up against you, because your light that you built, all of that throughout every moment, you were not alone. You were in connection to awareness with whatever this being is that I don't want to put in a box, but the words that we have are divine, God, source. You are never alone. The very moment that you have the feeling, if you're in this moment where you're like, man, like, I'm really down right now. This is really heavy. The fact that you're here is a synchronicity in that the divine is recognizing that you're looking for answers. And the divine is showing you that even if all of this message isn't for you, even if all of the answer isn't within this reading, you're heard. The divine is trying to reach you. The divine is trying to tell you you are loved, that your pain matters, that you're not alone in creating the solution. I am not going to tell you that any of the things that happened that were awful and horrible were okay. I'm not going to tell you that, because they're not okay. They're not okay. What I can tell you is you make the choice whether or not to allow it to own the rest of your life or to free yourself from it. Because the words coming are, the greatest revenge is to be happy in spite of what they have done, to try to take that from you. You don't need to literally attack, physically set boundaries. You don't need to be physically reinforcing of your freedom of their choices. You don't need to give hatred and anger and hurt and remain in that. It's not invalidating that to experience those things for a time is normal and healthy and part of the human process. It is normal. It is healthy. That's why anger and bartering and whatnot, like, it's all part of the grieving process to some extent. Everyone is going to be in a state of anger when they're losing someone they love and they're grieving. How they process that is unique to every individual. No one can tell you that you are processing your grief of the you that existed before X, Y, or Z was done or imposed upon you. No one can tell you you don't get to be angry about that. What I will tell you is, if you choose to remain in anger, then you are undermining your own future. Because you can choose to transmute that anger by going directly into it, understanding it, logically processing it, knowing what is you and what is not you. In other words, what was from that individual or situation. What you choose to own as yours and what you say is not yours, thus you're not going to process it. It's not for you to process for them. What I will tell you is that by being someone who chooses to go into that anger, into that hurt, and to look at it and understand it and sit with it as long as you need to revisit it until it no longer influences you. And you will be processing it at different times in your life. Every single time you surrender the need for justice or vindication or retribution in the traditional sense, like literally two warriors fighting it out, you don't necessarily need to go there. You could be someone that was horribly wronged, and they all are like, ha ha ha, ooh, we really screwed your life up. Even though we're miserable, now you're miserable with us and we're not alone. Misery loves company. And you're like somewhatly bullied by this energy that comes to you in different people repetitively in your life until you stop the process. You like that process being stopped is when you're like, look, like I'm not going to remain in this state. I don't need you. I'm stronger now. I've overcome, I've healed through what has been done, what has happened. I have chosen to free myself of this. So you could be miserable and watching while I'm happy and enjoying my life. And while you're happy and enjoying your life, a moment or two here or there, you may be aware that they're just like kind of pissy and watching from the sidelines. But that's all that you have is an awareness. Rarely here, there, and you're so busy being in the moment that they're not even an asterisk at the bottom of the page in your story. At that point, they're just a puff of air. They're not a storm anymore. And all of this was because you love yourself enough to want to understand yourself. And there may have been somewhat of a mirror, someone else outside of you who was like, hey, I think and feel these things too. And they made you feel like you weren't alone. And now, all of you, because you are human, you're going to need that social aspect. All of you is like, hey, amen. Like, I'm going to really galvanize all of my will into this lighthouse that I am. You are the lighthouse. All of it is you. Physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically, spiritually, however you want to label those energies spiritually. And going through this lighthouse process, you unlock more awareness of that because you've processed everything physically. You've processed everything emotionally and mentally. Well, now, what is there to process but the aspects of you that you have yet to discover? And that is something that someone else mirrored to you. Because you were aware that those aspects that most people don't talk about, most people don't go into, most people don't, like, they don't encourage you to investigate that, was impacting your life. You just did not understand how or why. But maybe you know, maybe you've always known, that to have a greater understanding of that, because knowledge is power, to have more knowledge of that aspect, because you've processed the physical, the mental, the emotional, you move into energetic and spiritual. The more knowledge you have of yourself in those areas, the more power you have to protect yourself from these storms that seek to knock you out of balance. Who you are is actually, it's more of a state of experience than it is one or two words or paragraph. It's really complex, and yet it's so simple. It's very hard to express. It's almost like in one moment, you suddenly have all the knowledge of a 2-hour movie, and you completely get it. That feeling that you end a really moving movie with, it really hits home in an emotional way, even if you don't outwardly express it. It hits home for you. You feel more present, more alive, more aware of yourself. Like you've been kind of lost in the movie. You were so engrossed in it. That level of awareness, but about you, your life, who you are. It's beyond words. How do you jam 2 hours worth of a movie into one moment? That's a lot of talking. That's a lot of stunts. That's a lot of physical acting out of dynamics all in one moment. When you do find yourself in this space, and I do have some guided meditations on Insight Timer, and I use the elements as a means for your mind to kind of like ground in the concept, because everything around you, you can make somewhat of a symbolic anchoring of a concept. So there's nowhere on this planet that you're going to be able to go where you're going to be completely absent of water, earth, air, fire. There's going to be one of them around you. Even inside. Like anywhere. So I've used those as a means to kind of work with that aspect of yourself, to kind of gain a bit of an insight to your subconscious. And yeah, I do have like a teaching, but it's more like about how to really work with the subconscious, how to unlock that part of you, if you're more interested in that. I don't post stuff like that here specifically because of an agreement with Insight Timer that specific thing stays there. However, throughout my readings, if you have been watching me, I do speak to these things, because the true key is you. You are the key. You are the one that when you understand all of you and you galvanize that will of I am not laying down and giving up. I am not accepting X, Y, or Z. That is unacceptable. You set yourself free. You unlock the gate because you are literally holding the key. You are the key. It's pretty much you're setting yourself free of 8 of Swords. And I know that's kind of triggering in a sense because your first encounter, like mine with 8 of Swords, has been, oh, you mean I'm doing this to myself? Oh, gee, thanks. I mean, why can't I just see how I'm tied up here? Like there's a bit of like that sassiness of, that comes in, and it's not as simple as that. It's very complex, but it requires you to look at yourself and begin to understand, say visually, if you're in the 8 of Swords and your image is that you're wrapped up in rope, but you're able to just tug the rope and it all comes off of you and you're able to walk away. Well, you got to look at the concept of the rope is the subconscious. Okay, well, what kind of rope is it? What color is it? How many fibers make up the threads that make up the rope? You got to look at each fiber of that thread, each filament, and all of this is metaphor, just like the iceberg is the ultimate metaphor for the subconscious, because there's so much under the water that you don't see. So with the rope, it's how much more can I break this down? How much more can I make this simpler and become aware of each aspect of that? You don't have to sit there and focus on it consciously. Once you've processed it, once you've healed it, and healing is like you've set yourself free of influence from it. It doesn't sway you anymore. If it enters your awareness, you don't become incredibly triggered by it to the point that you can't move beyond how triggered you are. It may come into your environment. Say somebody says something or treats you in a certain manner, and you have that like flash of, oh hell no, not acceptable, this is crossing my boundary, and I'm going to protect my peace. I'm going to protect my lighthouse. This, whatever it is, doesn't even get to take the doorbell switch. It doesn't get to take a screw, a nail. It doesn't get anything. What is yours. So you have that initial awareness, you handle it. You set a boundary, you reinforce it, you remove yourself from the situation, you acknowledge that you're upset, and then you move into the solution immediately to create that equilibrium once more. And that kind of brings me into the aspect for those that are tuning in where you're finding yourself literally in the storm as the lighthouse, and it's hitting you with everything it has, and you're discovering in new ways how strong you are. And it really doesn't want you to know that, but hey, you do, because those ships are not losing their way because your light is impacting them. So that will come to you in the form of people, individuals, depending on your gifts in your own path. Probably the best example that I could give, and yeah, I've encountered this. I have, where you have people that are seeking healing, but they don't know it. Their higher self, their future self knows it. And their future self has had a conversation with your future self, i.e. your higher selves got together and were like, hey, my person needs some help. Like, past me needs what you have right now. They need you to mirror this to them to be able to make their future a better one. Their higher self wants to have a better experience in their now. So they come back to past them and they see what they can do to help guide them to the healing they need in that moment. So I have been that for people. So I find myself in situations where it's like, all right, well, I'm getting the nudge to be here, to be open. I'm really not sure about this, but okay, I'm going to go with the flow. And I entertain the concept that I need to be open to what this individual has to say, what they have to share, what their questions are, what insights they're seeking about themselves. Because in truth, it's not about me. If you find yourself in this position with someone, it is not about you. And express that, because at some point they're going to get defensive. Excuse me, my cat decided to sharpen his claws. He's like, sharpen his claws, yeah. It's a part of like their natural hygiene to do so. It's their instinct, but it's sharpening that intuition. So you will know at what point where they are like, man, like, where do you come off? And you're like, this isn't really about me. You're talking with me. You're having your own thoughts and reactions based upon mine. And you're drawing your own conclusion about yourself as a result. My little helper over here. You're drawing your own conclusions as a result. Or they are drawing their own conclusions as a result. That then is like, well, what was I thinking? That causes them to look within themselves, which is really what they're looking for. Their higher self is looking for them to do that. So these interactions, like, sometimes they've been really cool. Like, I know that the light was able to reach them. And there's no ill will between either side. And like, we're happy when we encounter one another, but we keep it kind of superficial, because an interaction like that, depending on the individual, can be very, people just don't quite know how to respond to it. They know it's bigger than themselves, though. They know that something happened, but they don't know how to put it into words, and they're a little like, whoa, about it. But then you have other individuals that are almost like tests. Their whole purpose is to get beyond your boundary, to shake your foundation, to take that screw out of your lighthouse, and maybe the doorbell, and maybe they'll take your couch. I don't know. But their whole purpose is to do that because it's what they know. However, this is the storm. When this happens, this individual, even if you end up removing yourself from the dynamic after you've had the conversation, after you've expressed what needs to be expressed, or what you feel is intuitively coming through, what you're guided to share, you don't hold ill will towards them, because everyone is going through something, and you have no idea what their battle is that has brought them to that moment. But I'll tell you, brought them to you for a reason. Their higher self brought them to you for a reason, and it's because there's light within them. And that light within them is stronger because it knows your light exists. It's like reconnecting. So even though you're like, I'm not tolerating this, this is completely not okay, say your piece, express what needs to be said, that you're guided to, and then leave it to that being, that source, that power to do the work, to do the rest, and if you're meant to do more, listen to that. If you're meant to actually know them, if you're meant to have them in your life, if they're meant to be an acquaintance, a friend, if they're meant to become adopted family, if they're meant to be the other half of you, your partner, someone you could say is your soulmate. You let that intuition, that connection guide you, because only you know what intuition feels like to you. Only you know when it feels like it's manipulative instead of having a higher purpose, a better intention than to feed fear within you. Only you know what that light is and feels like within you. Your relationship is yours. It is private, it is personal. And maybe, some of the things I've said definitely resonate with you. Maybe some of them don't. Take what does, though, because that's there. And if you can use it to better understand yourself and your life and the people around you, why not? It only empowers you more to be happier, healthier, stronger, for your lighthouse to be able to go with the flow. And by that, maybe your lighthouse is aerodynamic. Maybe it shifts and moves with, all the particles of it shift and move given the circumstances. It becomes energetically what is needed. I'm not, that could be for specific people that are listening, that could be somewhat of an idea for visualization. But that came through for a reason. You are more adaptable and flexible than you know. Because you're not alone. And if you are beginning to do that work, or you've done that work and you've unlocked a little more of the you that is more in the energetic, spiritual aspect, these may be things that you've been a pro at many times. And you're kind of picking up that skill, dusting it off and putting it to use. You may be a master at this, but in your current conscious awareness, this is news to you. So however these interactions play out for you, know that it's not about you. It's about the light that you are, and that light, they're learning something from interacting with your light. Their light is interacting with your light. It's like the divine source, whatever, is reconnecting with more of itself this way. That this is not news to quite a few of you listening. I want to thank you for doing this work, because the more lighthouses that we have in this world, the happier, the more at peace, the more aware we will be to exactly how much we are interconnected and we are all in this together. How much we're not alone. And there are so many out there that have never had light other than that little bit within them, that as life has gone through and all these things that happen, it's just been getting smaller and smaller and smaller. I can't help but even knowing, having an interaction with someone that is not necessarily the most pleasant, I am aware that light is bolstered for having encountered a lighthouse. So thank you for doing this work. It is not for the faint of heart. It does take a warrior to do it, and it takes courage to remain open and receptive and to develop a very strong understanding of what is you and what is not you, so you can protect your energy, so you could be that boundary. You could be that warrior mama or warrior dad for you. You go to battle for your inner child, right? You are that for yourself. So thank you for doing that, because the world needs more. Needs more people like this. There are so many out there that are needing that. So if you have that within you, you're somewhere on this journey, somewhere in this process, take this as a very clear sign. You are on a path that leads you to this state of being where you are empowered, you are safe, you know you're not alone, and nothing can knock you off your game that you don't choose to allow it to. Where you're going, it'll be worth it because you'll have yourself completely at your own back. Every part of you will be your ally and you'll know it. And with that, it immediately branched out to every part of you. Well, if we're all connected, that would then mean that all the light and even the allies that you have that are well versed in the dark, because we have a balance of both within us. They, both sides within you, has your back. And when you're in that lighthouse, it's all working to make sure that you withstand whatever comes. The last step then would be to surrender to the unfolding of it, because now you get to discover that is unknown about you. Maybe you've gone through a lot of things in your life. It means that you're very powerful. If you choose to heal and overcome, you're going to make a lot of waves. You're going to make some really big changes. It's very powerful, powerful work. So thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. The divine within me honors the divine within you. The lighthouse within me acknowledges the lighthouse within you. Namaste.